Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actor-director Moosie Drier and author, lyricist Vivien Kooper. Director Moosie Drier was raised in Southern California and graduated from Grant High School in the Valley. He is best known for his work in the TV series Kids, Inc. He was on the Waltons, he was a regular on the Bob Newhart Show, and was the favorite child guest star on Laugh-In, Different Strokes, Chips, and on and on and on, lots and lots of shows. Moosie has starred in more than 20 movies of the week, and how did that career start as an actor?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Joan.
Oh, I'm glad you're here.
You're lovely and charming.
Thank you.
Well, it started, my mother took, my father and mother split up and I never met my father, so my mother took 4 of us kids out to Hollywood.
Wow.
And put 3 of us in show business. Met a children's agent and put us into show business when I was 4.
So she wanted you to make the money?
You know, that's not such a bad idea if you're a parent. Yeah, sure. Yeah, apparently, sure.
Well, I have, 3 great kids, and they should be in movies?
Well, that's interesting that you asked that. I had a good experience. I grew up as a child actor, obviously, and I wouldn't put my own children in the business. That's just me, though. It's changed a lot. First of all, back then, you know, there were maybe a dozen child actors who worked a lot, so the competition wasn't so fierce. And now, and then dealing even back then with rejection and being taken out of school. You get taken out of school.
Yeah, did you go to college?
No, I didn't.
You didn't get a chance?
I studied film, but in another, I didn't go to college.
I see. But did you then did she change your name to Moosie?
You know what?
To be in TV?
28% of my life is explaining my name, right?
Only 28?
Only 28. That's because
I thought Moosie was a girl. I know a Moosie girl.
Oh, do you?
A girl Moosie.
Boy, I've heard it all. I've heard people have approached me and said, you know, my dog's name is
Moosie.
I've gotten that a lot. Gee, thanks. Now, Moosie is, I was supposed to be Gary Drier. My father was good friends with a baseball player who used to play for the New York Yankees named Moose Skowron. And somehow they call me Moose, and then Moose, and then my mom had it legally changed when I was very young.
Oh, she did?
And then try as I may, like gum on the bottom of my shoe, it won't go away, and it's just Moosie.
So you're Moosie.
Yeah.
And when you, well, I guess because you were a well-known child actor, they knew a boy was coming in.
Right.
I mean, they were calling for a boy, and they got Moosie Boy, right?
Right. Probably half the time they went, what kind of name is that? We just have to see this kid, just to see what a Moosie is like.
What were your favorite roles as a child actor?
Oh gosh. I played John Denver's son in Oh God, and
that's
I won an Emmy as a teenager of playing and it was a daytime Emmy for an after-school special called Hewitt's Just Different.
And how old were you then?
I was 12 years old.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
So you really started early.
Yeah. Well, I started when I was 4 in 1969.
Were you real precocious? Could you memorize your lines easily?
You know, it's a muscle that you build
develop,
to memorize. Of course, now I don't know what I had for dinner last night, but.
But was it easy for you?
It was. It came easy for me, actually. I started acting before I learned to read. I was 4, and
so they would repeat.
So they would give me a cassette tape. Paul Keyes, who was a producer on Ronan Martin's Laugh-In, a writer, he would send tapes to my house, so I would just listen to it. And basically, at that age, you kind of mock, you parrot the dialogue.
Oh, so that's how they were doing it. How did they treat you on the set?
Great. You know, I had a great.
Were you special, or were you like rigid what you had to do, or?
You know what? There's no secret about it. When you're a child you get treated differently when you're a child actor. You get spoiled.
And you should. I mean, you should be treated differently because I think it's taking you out of your milieu, out of your childhood.
Right,
really.
I tell you, and if I was treated well, it balanced out, because when I went back into the public school, and then the bullies like, hey, I saw you on TV, like, let me beat you up.
They didn't want to be your friend. They wanted to beat you up instead.
Yeah.
At that, I don't know if it was at that time, but you did a lot of voiceovers. And you still do, I guess.
Yeah, that's one thing I direct now, television and theater. But that's one thing I still do. So part of the carryover from acting is I do voiceover work. I did Shrek and Madagascar, which is still out right now, and many animated films.
What kind of voices do you do?
Let's see, in Shrek, in Shrek I was, obviously not one of the main, roles, but like I did 3 or 4 different people in Shrek. I was one of the merry men who.
But how do you change your voice? What do you do? Or is it just this voice we're listening to?
Well, a lot of times it is just this voice, but you just do it. You just, depends on what they need. They get together a voice group, and it's whoever, whoever can do certain specialty voices out of the group will come up and do that cue and record those cues.
But do you change your voice?
No, I'm not one of those people. I'm not the Rich Little type, or I don't impersonate too very much.
And then you went into theater. You said you were directing. You're directing TV as well?
Yeah.
Oh, so tell us how you got into directing, and why aren't you acting anymore?
Oh, okay. Well, I got into directing from. Well, I was on a show, a series. And I did 5 seasons of the show, and this was a children's show called Kids Incorporated.
Oh yeah, Kids Inc.
And
Kids Inc.
Kids Inc. Right, where Jennifer Love Hewitt and I did that. I was on that show, and then I got in my contract that I could direct that, and that was in 1988. That's when I got into the Directors Guild.
Oh, you did. Oh, so you started directing right as you started maturing, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I always knew that's what I wanted to do, though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
When you just mentioned Jennifer Love Hewitt, did other kids come out of Kids Inc.? Other stars come out of it?
Absolutely. Mario Lopez and, there's Martika was a big recording star. Stacey Ferguson, who's in the Black Eyed Peas, this R&B group.
Music, basically?
Yeah, because it was a musical show. So.
I see. So, TV, you started directing TV. And have you ever done theater?
I have, as an actor.
Did you act on stage?
I did. I did.
I see.
The Huntington Hartford Theater, which doesn't exist anymore in Hollywood.
I love the Huntington Hartford
Theater. Yeah, it was a great venue, wasn't it? I did All My Sons, Arthur Miller play there, and I did a few other equity waiver plays, but mostly, television and film is where.
Oh, so you were feeling comfortable on the stage and able to feel like you could direct then?
Yeah, well, I got to a certain age, probably in my mid-teens, where I didn't do any job as an actor without observing the director. I was really interested in being behind the scenes early on. And
did you learn anything from directors you had that you apply yourself?
Absolutely, because there's AFI and there's all sorts of film schools, but a lot of people say this, there's really no experience and no education like on the set.
Yeah.
And so, I was lucky to have all that, set time.
Do you have everything mapped out? Let's talk about what you're doing now, because you're directing Precious Piglet.
Yeah, well, right. Well, I directed. I direct for Nickelodeon, and I directed Reba for the WB Network. So I do television, TV, but right now I'm doing theater. This show for the summer that I have to tell you, Joan, I adore. It's just so much fun. It's called Precious Piglet and Her Pals. And it's an original musical.
It's a musical.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and we have the talent in the show, you just wouldn't believe it. It's at the Whitefire Theater in Sherman Oaks in the Los Angeles area. And we have an amazing show. The kids are really enjoying it.
Is it for young audiences?
It's for children from ages 2 to probably 7 or 8 years old.
Well, are you back drawing on what you were doing as an actor doing that with your...
I am a bit, yeah. I am a bit. I got to tell you, though, I'm one of those believes that live theater for children is kind of a lost art in this day and age of video games and DVD players in the back of minivans, which are great and convenient, but there's something about that live theater that I got when I was a kid that I really enjoyed. So getting a chance to do the show with such great people. It's exciting.
When you direct it, then do you sit in the audience and watch the way the kids are reacting?
Absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely. We have all the kids come onto to the stage at the end of the show and interact with the performers. And so that's the thing about live theaters. They really get to meet their instant heroes right then and there. It's right before you, and it's just really effective. You can see it in the children.
You worked with Mickey Rooney, who was a child actor.
No, I played Mickey Rooney.
Oh, you played Mickey
Jackie
Rooney.
Cooper directed a movie the week called Rainbow with Andrea McArnold, who played Judy Garland, and I played Mickey Rooney.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that you played
that's
him.
how the
Did
information
you
gets-
talk to Mickey Rooney at that time?
No, but I watched. There's some. Oh, there a nostalgia. I don't know. There's a theater in LA. I can't. The name escapes me right now. But I went and watched many
Oh, you
Mickey
did.
Rooney films.
But you worked with George Burns.
Yes.
You did work with George, because that's when John Denver.
He was in No God, and yeah.
Yeah, and did you actually learn anything special from those old timers?
Well, no, I was actually a teenager when I did Oh God, and the one thing I remember about George Burns was that he sat in the back of his dressing room with a cigar, and hey kid, he was real sweet but real shy. And my mother at the time, she told me, you're probably doing George Burns' last movie. He went on to live like 25 years later and do a million films after that. But
that was great.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to end this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching Moosie, and don't go away. We'll be right back with Vivien Kooper. That was a really good lady. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with author-lyricist Vivien Kooper. Vivien was born and raised in California. She graduated from Polytechnic High School. She took several music classes, but then I guess recording artist, record producer Al Kooper came into her life. And was that a big influence?
It's so funny because growing up, I wrote poetry and then I started writing songs, and different people that I listened to on the radio ended up coming into my life via Al. Like I listened to the lyrics of Bob Dylan and thought, God, if only I could ever write something like Dylan. And I listened to...
Oh, you were thinking about writing?
Oh, absolutely. And I figured that I would make my living as a poet and lyricist. That's all that I wanted.
Oh, you
was
did?
to have like books of poetry in the bookstores and maybe some lyrics on the radio. And so through Al, I ended up meeting some of my heroes like Tom Petty and Bob Dylan, and Al himself, some of the songs that I grew up listening to on the radio that I didn't realize they were him.
Was he singing or producing those records?
The things that I listened to him playing on the radio were things from his days when he had formed Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Oh, so did he sing with them?
He did.
I see.
He sang and he wrote.
And so how did you get to meet him?
I, as the lyricist, had joined something called, I don't remember what they called it, but it was through Music Connection magazine, and people every week would go and get together and work on projects. And then the culmination of these projects was that they would have somebody come down, a couple of luminaries, and perhaps somebody would get a record deal or a music publishing deal. And he was one of the, luminaries. He was the head of A&R at Polygram at the time, and he came down that evening, and I got up and asked some stupid question, and that was sort of the end of that.
That was
a
cute question. It was a cute question to him, right?
It was.
Because he obviously influenced you a lot. You did then meet Bob Dylan, you met Jimi Hendrix, you met those people.
I didn't meet Jimi Hendrix because he had since passed away. This was in the mid-'80s I was with Al from 85 to 91, but it was a tremendous influence on me and a great time of inspiration because Al is a musicologist and gave me such an incredible musicology background, and he would just sit me between two speakers and play records over and over again and just say, honey, this is the history of this and the history of that. And so for years...
How did you become involved with the live people? With the people who
these were his peers.
They were his peers, so you were...
Yeah, being a record producer and a recording artist, these were his peers. He played on all the Dylan albums.
Did you interact with any of them?
Yeah, they came to our house for dinner.
Yeah,
one of my greatest memories was putting my mascara on and hearing the doorbell ring and realizing that one of the Beatles was at my door. It was George Harrison.
And he worked with Al?
Yes, Al played on one of his albums, and so it was really amazing to have George Harrison sitting on the couch, very intently with his eyes closed, listening to songs that I wrote. It was surreal.
Is that right? Songs that you had written. So Al
Yes.
was using these songs, or
We wrote many things together, which he hasn't yet recorded, but other people have recorded some of some of my songs.
Smoke Through My Fingers. I have this CD.
That's my CD that is, one of my songwriting partners is a guy named Jimmy Waddell in Colorado, and he put a compilation of our songs together, the songs that we'd written together, and they're my lyrics and his songs, and I just love that cover.
Don't you love it?
The designer is incredible.
Yeah, it's great. And what caused you to write this, Smoke?
Generally, heartache.
Is that what the lyrics are?
Yeah, that particular song, you're like, smoke through my fingers, impossible to hold. But just, I tend to look at life with a writer's eye, and things just sort of touch me deeply, and, lyrics come out of that.
Does the poetry then turn into music?
Well, it's funny because with poetry, which is what I wrote first for many years as a child, it's a mathematical equation. Like, you can take a poem, and what I learned to do over the years was you take a poem and then you have to sort of break it down mathematically in order for the person who's writing the music.
Oh, right.
Because every verse has to be the same, and the chorus, everything has to be sort of mathematically arranged. So it's sort of a poem, meets a mathematical equation, and that's how you get a lyric.
Did you rewrite any poetry so that it would fit that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I certainly did, and I still do.
When I don't know if this came next, but Tiny Tim and Mr. Plim, were you writing books at the time?
As I said, I figured that I would end up making my living writing music and poetry,
right.
and then as the years went on, I started writing short stories, and then
you did.
Through a piece of serendipity, actually before writing Tiny Tim and Mr. Plim, I was writing many stories of people like my dad who worked below the line in film and TV, and having written those stories, a publisher came along who was looking for a writer to write this book, and given my background of having lived in the music business as Al Kooper's wife, I sort of knew that world. I knew the world of Tiny Tim.
Did you know Tiny Tim?
I didn't know him. He had passed away before I wrote the book, but I knew his best friend and manager, Steve Plim, who's an agent and manager in Iowa.
Oh, that's how that Mr. Plim is. And
yes, and
see.
he's just a really wild, like, white patent leather shoe wearing, hard-boiled kind of a character. So the combination of very innocent and sort of the savant that Tiny Tim was, and this hard-boiled character that Mr. Plim was, made for a very hilarious read.
Were they good friends?
They were best friends, but
it is funny. I started reading it last night, and it is funny. And I thought, how does she know these things?
Well, it's funny because I had to, as a girl, I had to write this book in the voice of this hard-boiled Mr. Plim, because it's written in the first person as Mr. Plim, so I had to sort of inhabit his spirit in order to tell the story.
Plim.
I got to know him in the writing of it.
At least you had someone to look at. With Tiny Tim, you didn't know what.
No, but I felt I'm highly intuitive, and I just sort of had a sense of who he was. And from the stories that Steve told me, it was just easy to get a sense of him as a very sweet and dear man.
Was he?
He just seemed to me truly like a savant, like somebody with just the most innocent, open heart. And he was just completely misunderstood. He was guileless, and especially in the world of show business, very few people are guileless. Everybody sort of has, a plan and a strategy, and he was just a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed guy.
Well, why was he famous then?
I think that quality in him, that you looked at him and you were like, is this guy, could he possibly be for real? There was something so authentic about him, and so childlike and so uncalculated, that he was just completely appealing to people.
But he sang one song, or I mean.
Well, yes,
was it like
his
Tiptoe?
Tiptoe Through the Tulip song was he was most well known for that, but many people remembered him from getting married on the Tonight Show.
Right, Johnny Carson.
Yes.
Way before any of these things ever took place, right?
And from George Slaughter's Laugh-In, Mr. Slaughter was kind enough to write our foreword
Oh, he was
that
on
book.
George. He was with George. And
Yeah,
that?
he was
Oh,
on Laugh-In quite a bit.
We love the Schlotters, Jolene and George.
I know, he's been so sweet and so dear,
They're-
and he wrote a wonderful forward for the book.
He wrote the forward. He's wonderful. But then you came to this Making Hollywood Magic.
Well, after my years with Al, where I really perfected my songwriting craft, Al and I sort of went our separate ways, and I returned to California, and through serendipity, somebody had written a story about my dad, who was a special effects guy for 35 years. He built the sharks for the Jaws movies and the Universal Studios tour, and he used to fly the cups across the room on Bewitched. And
Oh, is that what he did? That was on the
Yeah.
TV show, but
Yeah.
now we have the movie. Did he
on
work?
the TV show.
The TV show.
And he worked on Rod Serling's Night Gallery and The Twilight Zone. And so somebody was interviewing my dad and writing a piece about whatever happened to Larry Needham. And he mentioned me to the writer and said, my daughter's a writer. And within a couple of months, the girl sold a screenplay and gave me her gig, which was going to the movie studios to write about all these people that are what is called below-the-line workers in film and TV, like special effects, set decorators, set builders, the prop people.
She actually was writing the book, and she did something else, and you
No.
got it?
Well, she was writing the stories, which
Yeah.
I later compiled into the book, and within a month of meeting her, she sort of got her big break and sold a screenplay, and I took over writing these stories, and then later thought, wouldn't this make a wonderful book? Because people know so much about what's called above-the-line people, the
Right.
actors, directors, and they just don't know much about the people who, make their living making Hollywood magic.
Well, one of the things in here says that Beverly Garland writes
Yeah.
your forward, and she says we wouldn't be able to be on the stage or
No.
in a movie without these people
It's
that
really
you write
true.
about. And those people are, say, property manager.
Right.
What is a property manager? A master.
Prop
Property master.
Well, the prop master is, for example, let's see, like this beautiful piece that you have over here, or like maybe
this?
somebody's holding a cigar
Oh, yeah.
or something. Those would be props, or maybe that's something that the set decorators would handle. But this book sort of covers the prop people who take care of
Right.
everything from a hat, a cane, a cigar, a cigarette lighter, anything that sort of gives things their character and their personality, and then the set builders first go and build the sets.
Here, let's talk, because we have, let's see, what are we calling this?
That is from, I believe that's from...
Construction coordinator?
Yes, that's what the set builders or construction coordinators do. And before anything ever turns into a movie, like this picture here of Joe versus the volcano is a great example. You have
This
this on the
one?
one hand, which is sort of the set in process, and then you have what people would actually end up seeing in the movie, even though these are from two separate movies.
Yes,
but you see what I'm saying.
so the
construction
coordinator does this. He's the builder. He does something
well, he
like
has
this.
a crew of an enormous crew of people that work around the clock, and the amazing thing is that these people erect these sets and tear them down like in just record time. It's just unbelievable the time constraints that they're working
Same thing,
under.
but they have to be strong enough, right? And they have to be safely constructed.
Yeah, exactly. So in the same way that a construction crew would go out and build a house, they
Yeah.
have to be strong enough to withstand whatever's going to happen in the scene, and yet then at the same time something that can be easily just sort of torn down. It's funny, I love the quote on the front of the book. John Villarino, who was he's one of the head construction coordinators in Hollywood, and he was the president of Local 44 for many years, where many of the workers in this book hail from. And I love what he says, that he says this job is like being a circus roustabout. You go in, you set everything up, and then you tear it all down and you move on, just like you're in the circus.
Oh, that's true,
Isn't
isn't it? Yeah. Well, then you write about special effects technician.
Like my dad.
That's what your father did.
Yeah.
So you were around that all the time?
Yeah, growing up, my dad's idea of like bringing us home presents is, I'll never forget like a day he came home with like shark's teeth strung on necklaces for us kids from the sharks that he'd built for Jaws, and It was so amazing. He arranged one day, my favorite show of all time is The Twilight Zone, and he arranged, when I was a little girl, I got to spend the day with Rod Serling on the set. And you know, the world that's captured in this book, it doesn't exist anymore. The old studio system is gone.
That's an interesting thing too. Production designer is another person who would be included in that.
Yeah.
Set decorator.
Yes.
Transportation captain.
That's right. And those are the people that move everything around on the set. They make sure that everything and everyone can get from point A to point B. But everyone in this book and the roles that they fill, from production designer to set decorator, special effects technician, prop masters, set builders, that whole world of the studio system where you could go to work like my dad did with his lunch pail for 35 years and work at the same studio, those days are over. It's just, that
so
entire
they knew
thing
who he
has
was
shifted.
when he went to the studio.
Absolutely.
They knew who he was.
Yes.
He was in everything that was going on. I mean, he would.
Yeah, it was a family,
Yeah.
and now the whole thing, you know, the market economy has changed, and much of that has moved to Canada, and the
right.
studios now rent themselves out to different production companies, and there's no longer that glue where you go in and you know, hey Joe, hey Larry, and everybody knows everybody else. That's one of the sets, one of the sets from Jurassic Park, which John Villarino, the set construction coordinator who wrote our afterword, that's one of the pieces that he built.
And then what do they have to do? They all have to kind of be friendly, because somebody has to
Absolutely.
construct it, somebody has to bring the props
Yes.
in.
It's actually run very much like an orchestra. It goes beyond
Yeah.
friendly. It's a full-blown choreography between all the different departments.
Who conducts that? Who's the conductor there?
Well, the
Director?
coordinators of each area, like the construction coordinator,
Right.
it has all of his men working, and he's in touch with
I see.
the special effects coordinator, and they're in touch with the
see.
decorators, and so there's sort of department heads, and then under them are all of the workers.
Well, I loved reading it because they're short stories,
Yes.
and you can read and learn about people. And I thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so much
in.
for having me. It's been
And
delightful.
Thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and we'll see you next time. Keep writing. 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017.